once you really make peace with the idea that these are just habits and patterns of thought and behavior that you've allowed to be in your life, losing the critic becomes really, really easy.
Welcome to Intuition Unlocked, the podcast empowering empathic women who feel misunderstood, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their intuition, begin to trust their sensitivities, find inner clarity, and show up with embodied, unstoppable confidence in their daily lives. I am your host, Olivia Ashley, an empath and intuitive, and I am so happy you're here. Hello, and welcome back to Intuition Unlocked. It's Olivia here, and in today's conversation, I am speaking with Sue Erhart, a former corporate executive and lawyer turned spiritual guide and author of Lose Your Critic for Good. After years of navigating high-pressure environments and silencing her own inner voice, Sue now helps others quiet their inner critic and reclaim their spirit through what she calls practical spirituality, a grounded, accessible approach to self-love, intuition, and real transformation. So in this conversation, you will discover why the inner critic is so persistent in your life and what can finally make it lose its grip on you. You'll also learn how women in particular internalize judgment and how we can begin unlearning these ingrained patterns that cause it. And we explore how reclaiming your spirit can unlock more confidence, alignment, and deeper connection to your intuitive voice. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and let's get you into it. Welcome to Intuition Unlocked, Sue. I'm so grateful to have you here with me today.
Olivia, I'm delighted to be with you as well.
Well, to begin, I would love if you could share a little bit about your journey and how your connection to spirit and intuition really began, and maybe how it's evolved over time, bringing you to where you are.
Well, that's a long story, Olivia, but let me just jump in. So, I'm a lawyer by training and a recently retired lawyer. And my spiritual journey has been my entire life, but I really didn't bring awareness to that journey until somewhere around midlife. And I really saw my own life and my own personal experience as my experimental ground. And I used my own life to really pursue getting in touch with that inner wisdom and that inner voice. And in that path of pursuing and experimenting on myself, I really found a platform that I'm excited to share today with you and your listeners.
Well, that's amazing. I'm excited to hear everything that you've learned and what you've created. So we can jump right in because your work really centers around helping people silence their inner critic and reclaiming their joy and their spirit, which is such a beautiful pursuit and so important. So let's start with what exactly is the inner critic and why is it so hard for somebody to release its grip on it?
So, the first thing I'll talk about is just the critic, because the critic shows up in a lot of different ways. And I want to talk about those because I think a few of them are a little sneaky, and I like outing them so that people can see the behaviors that are the result of the critic. So, the first most obvious way that the critic shows up for people is through self criticism. We all know what this is. You're hard on yourself. You beat yourself up, and you think that the key to success in life is to constantly motivate yourself through fear and criticism. Okay, that's just the obvious way. And I think a lot of us see that. But there are other ways that the critic shows up that I want to highlight. All right, so the second way I see the critic showing up for a lot of people is that they play small and settle. So these are people who tend to say, oh, don't mind me. What I have is enough. Or, this is good enough. I'm not going to reach for what I truly want. I'm just going to settle for what I think I can get. Okay. So that's critic mentality, keeping you small. I also see the critic show up in people who think that their purpose in life is to put all others ahead of themselves and to deprioritize themselves last. Again, I see that as critic mentality, that you're deprioritizing the self. I see the critics show up for a lot of people who think that they need to conform. They need to act a certain way, look a certain way, dress a certain way. But all of those behaviors of conformance are the critic. And the last way I see the critic is it's not overt criticism, it's more downplaying. And it's a lot of people who think that it's like bringing false humility and downplaying the self, and that makes you good or worthy. So those are all critic behaviors. So just want to put that out there. So now the second part of your question is, why is it so hard? Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that once you really make peace with the idea that these are just habits and patterns of thought and behavior that you've allowed to be in your life, losing the critic becomes really, really easy. And that's what I teach. The hardest part is seeing these behaviors and patterns as the critic versus seeing them as your authentic self.
Yes. Oh, that's really powerful to hear and to understand. Thank you for giving us those different ways a critic can show up as well, because that really helps us go, which am I really operating in and what can I do about it? And you really said that for many women, the critic shows up in really unique and deeply ingrained ways. What patterns have you noticed? So I know you just gave us the types, but are there other patterns or things you've seen where we can understand that and begin to unlearn those patterns?
Sure. I mean, I think it's rampant, frankly. I see it I'll use myself as an example in places where I myself had automatic behaviors that I didn't realize were downplaying myself. So I found that if I was cooking dinner, I thought about what everyone else wanted to eat without thinking about what excited me. So that's just a really small and basic thing. But I see a lot of us women go about our lives. I mean, we plan vacations for our families around what others want to do. We plan out activities for the family on what makes others happy. And we utterly fail to take a moment and sit with ourselves and say, what do I want here? What would I enjoy? And so many of us then subconsciously perpetuate this idea around women coming second. So it's something that I've seen in my own life. And when I find those little ways on a daily basis where I'm not putting myself into the mix, I stop and I really get centered around who I am and what I want. And the more I make that a habit and an automatic way of living, the closer I am to my intuitive voice and my inner wisdom.
Mm. That was really important to hear. And you're right. Yes, we often, especially as not just women, but like any caretakers or people who are nurturing or just have that people pleasing tendency, we're going to put ourselves second. So that gave me some really interesting thoughts to think about too of the broadness of the inner critic. You hear that word, you might think that's a very specific thing, but it actually is, it's sneaky. Like you said, it can show up in many different ways. And I think we've all tried affirmations or mindset hacks to go, I'm just going to like force my way through this or fix it. But the critic often returns, or maybe we're not even realizing, like, okay, we're studying these affirmations, but this voice, like, is just, it's still there. Why do you think so many common self help approaches, such as these, don't offer lasting relief from this self judgment?
Well, first, I will tell you, I do think affirmations are helpful. So I think they're a great place to start. We need affirmations, we need those positive thoughts, and we need to repeat them a few times because when you repeat a thought, it grows bigger and bigger in your life and it becomes more accessible to you. So I do think affirmations and the practice, a very deliberate practice of saying positive things is helpful, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. What needs to happen, and what I teach, is that you need to go into your life as it exists today, and you need to encounter those moments when the critic flares, when you're playing small, when you've stopped dreaming, when you're settling, when you're accepting what is instead of expressing what you want. And then you need to do the work of, in that moment, stopping the pattern of thought and very intentionally and very deliberately stepping into what you want. And this was something, Olivia, that it took me a lot of years to learn. When I was early in my career, when I was a baby lawyer, I thought my value was that I did what people expected of me, that I showed up as people wanted me to show up. I actually thought one of my skills and super strengths is that I could walk into a room, read the person in the room, and figure out what they needed from me. And in doing that, I realized very quickly that I was giving myself away. And I thought that I was being good, successful, and delivering to my clients, to my employer, and to others. And in reality, I was leaving myself out of the picture. So these are things that we need to take into our day, into our daily habits, and really make them real. And that's what I teach.
That's such an important reminder. And it's tricky, right? And it will take time. And yet, that's such a reset moment when you had that realization of, I'm doing so good. I know what everyone needs. But then, what about you? What about you? And I think that's exactly at the heart of really my podcast. And I think a lot of the work that we're all doing is realizing, wait, I think we're doing it a little bit backwards. So, in Lose Your Critic for Good, you guide readers through a 28-day journey that's really rooted in practical spirituality. And I'd love to hear from you. What does practical spirituality mean to you?
So, to me personally, it means I personally see myself and every other human as an eternal being, and we're all connected spiritually. So, to me, it means God, universe, source. And practical spirituality means that spirit, those resources are there to help you live a better life today. They're not just airy fairy, they're not just out there existing for you to worship on Sunday morning. They're there as free universal resources to bring into your day, to bring into your moment, and to help you live a better life. And I'm passionate about that because for a lot of years, I ran away from spirituality and religion because in my mind, spirituality and religion at the time, I had mistaken beliefs that really saw them as conforming my conduct and denying my wants. And I really had that exactly wrong. And I now see spirituality about getting in touch with my intuitive voice, my spirit, which is the keeper of my wants, my passion, my desires, and my interests, and then letting that express in the world.
So, how does one begin to do that? How does one really begin to build that connection? Maybe they have it, maybe they don't, maybe there's somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you help someone really start to understand and daily integrate that
Mm-hmm.
into their life?
So I have lots of tools and I love sharing them. I love sharing all the different ways because there are so many ways. In this abundant universe, there are abundant tools and ways for you to do this. But let me talk simply about one. And this is one tool that I teach and that I mention in the book. And it is a highly effective tool. And it's something that I personally continue to use and it grounds me very, very well. So many of us run our lives with a to-do list. And we make this list of actions that we think are required of us. And then we force ourselves through the list. And then we measure how we feel about ourselves, whether or not we've completed that list. And in this way, we give our power to a list of things that we're not excited to do. So I have completely divorced myself from working that way. That's how I started out my career. And I flipped that on its head. And what I teach people to do is to use a daily logbook. So grab any notebook. And at the front of the notebook, I write this and I say, this is my logbook. And here I will record the good, the wonderful, and the done. And then I record what I did and how I felt as I was doing it. And I just log my day, what's happening. And I use it to capture any good moment, anything that made me smile. I use it to capture great ideas and inspiration, but I log what I did and how I felt. Now, this one practice is tremendously powerful because if you do this, what you are doing is over and over throughout the day and turning it into a habit, you're connecting into you, to your inner wisdom, to your intuition, and you are celebrating what you did. And then you're noticing how you feel, which is to me a key spiritual practice to notice how you feel. So that's just one tool, Olivia, just one tool that someone could adopt starting today, free and easy, and it would put them on a path to getting closer to their intuitive voice.
That is so helpful and such a, I'd say, an inspiring way to look at life. Like you said, you flipped it on its axis of sorts of instead of approaching the day or whenever you decide to do that logbook, you aren't just setting out, oh gosh, look at my 10 things to do. It's, you probably already know what you need to do. You're doing them and then you're reflecting and going, wow, look at what lights me up. Mhm.
I think that it's a common human trait for many of us that we tend to see lack, we tend to see what's off or missing, and we tend to see what is undone. And that is simply a habit of thought. And it's a habit of thought that does not serve you. And when you adopt a logbook habit, what happens is you retrain your brain to really begin to see the goodness in your life, to see what you have accomplished, to see that all is well. And this fixation on the next thing or what is undone is simply unhelpful.
I love it. And this goes into my next question, which is you often speak about shifting from doing into being, which is exactly kind of the great example of what you just gave. But I want to build on that because I think there's even more there. How can this shift into that being help change how we relate to ourselves and support that peace in our life and us finding that clarity?
Yeah, I write about this a lot in my weekly newsletter and in lots of places. I was someone for a lot of years who worshiped the God of productivity. And I'll just say, I love getting things done. And so I frequently found myself doing just for the sake of doing and just feeling like I had to do in order to prove my worth and my value. And when you get into a cycle of doing in order to feel good about yourself or to feel worthy or to feel like you're contributing, you will be perpetually in that cycle of always needing to do to feel good about yourself. So, what I really teach is breaking that habit of productivity and stepping into being, which to me means unconditional love, unconditional worthiness, and being enough, whether or not you produce anything. And so you shift into being. But here's the really fun part, Olivia. When you shift into being, you get in touch with your natural motivators. You get in touch with the things that bring you joy. You get in touch with your natural desires, your wants. And when you get in touch with those, they are powerful. So the irony is that my productivity soared once I moved through the being state and really got in touch with my natural motivators. And that's really when I shifted and started writing, and my writing career really took off.
And so I'd love to hear what are some practices that you do that help you shift into that being, or what were those things that you changed in your day to day that really helped you flip that and go, no, I'm approaching my day differently. Because I think that's what we all need to hear is the practicality of how do I actually do this? And I know it's going to be unique for everyone, but if you can give some just like insights to what it looked like for you.
Yeah. And I'll say if you are someone who takes a day off or hits a free Saturday and you can't figure out what you want to do with it, and you find yourself just doing the laundry, going grocery shopping, I mean, just doing routines without getting in touch with what you want, then you really need some being days. And so, being days to me are days where, and now I live these days, but at first I really had to be deliberate. But being days are where you get in touch with how you feel. What's your energy saying? And you follow your energy. And if that means that you park yourself on the couch and you binge watch a show, you do that, but then you're really, really mindful of whether you're criticizing yourself as you're doing that, whether you feel embarrassed that you're doing that, that you're taking that time. And you combat that thinking and you use self talk to say, I'm doing this because this feels good to me. It also means that you really take the time throughout your day to just check in with yourself and say, what do I want here? And you say what you want, even in situations where you feel like you can't get what you want. And you might say it only to yourself, but those anchoring habits really move you into a state of being. But to me, moving into a state of being is a journey. It's a personal transformation journey. There are lots of tools to help you do it, but those are just a couple ways that I really shifted. Even when I was still working my fast paced corporate career, I was still stopping and saying, for a meeting that someone scheduled with me, I would stop and say, what do I want from this meeting? And I would anchor to what I want and my intention before I walked in the door.
That's big. I mean, I can just feel what that energy does when you're speaking that of when you show up, but you set yourself first and you're fully embodied and you know, okay, I've already checked in with myself. You show up in such a different way into everything you go into your day to day with. I think that's a really, really helpful reminder. And I want to talk a bit about how when you can silence the critic, it becomes a doorway to intuition and the deeper inner wisdom. Can you walk us through how that transformation unfolds of sorts? So, what happens when we start reeling in that critic, and what happens when we start really connecting and listening to ourselves?
So I see it this way: people who are wedded to the critic, who tend to be rule followers, do what they should, meet others' expectations, are always sort of chasing something outside of themselves. They're tied to something that is pulling them through life based on what someone else thinks is an ideal life or what makes you good and moral, whatever it might be. You're listening to someone else's ideas. And when you break free from that and then just start tuning in, I would say what happens is your authentic spirit, call it your soul, call it your inner wisdom, call it your guidance, that soul just explodes. I mean, you're just enlivened. You feel present. You feel like yourself. You feel like you have your own wants and passions and goals and things that you're chasing in life. It's a self centered way to live. And I mean that in the best way possible, meaning you are showing up and owning your life. And in that way, you're having a huge impact on everyone in your orbit.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And it's so important to realize when you're not in the space, or maybe that's new for you, you might not understand how deeply incredible your life is going to get once you start connecting and utilizing it. But it will, it's just, it unfolds in that way. And so, how can people begin to hear their intuitive voice beneath that critic, beneath the noise? How can we start to really make sure that that is what's coming forward first?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I would say is drop all the shoulds in your life. And I say that as someone, I lived for a lot of years where I literally woke up and first thing in the morning, I said to myself, what should I do? What should I have in my, I mean, as if there was an unwritten playbook. And you need to just simply break up with all the shoulds, the musts, the need to, the ought to, all of those ideas of what your life is supposed to look like. And really start asking yourself, what do I want? And letting yourself sit with those wants. Many people, if you ask them what they want, they're at a loss. They really are because they're so listening to things outside of themselves and letting themselves be drugged through their day, through their schedule, through their work, just doing what's expected of them. And I just see it as essential to make that time to start your day and throughout your day to really anchor and say, what do I want here? Why am I doing this? What do I hope to gain from this?
Yeah, I feel like we've covered this, but it's coming up really strongly for me to bring up speaking to those people because I've been there. Sometimes I'm still there of when I'm asked that question, well, what do you want? What makes you happy? And I go, oh my gosh, I've one, not been asked that question in so long, but two, I'm not even sure because there's so much as a mother, as a worker, as all these things, I automatically layer those up in front of me. And so, where can we start to remember our wants, remember, oh, I can come first?
First thing is start a practice of saying, I want, if only to yourself, because often it is hard for us to verbalize it to others, but to say, I want all day long. And here's what I mean: get that menu at the restaurant and look at it and say, I want a cheeseburger, but I'm ordering a salad because I think it's the healthy option. Just get honest about it. Okay. You've got to do this. I mean, I think so many of us are out of touch. I mean, we literally look at restaurant menus and say, oh, what should I eat? What should I eat here? Like, again, as if there's an answer out there when the answers for what is best for you reside within you. The answers for how to live a great life are all within you. So we need to just sort of break out of looking at the shoulds, the musts, or even like what someone else says is a good idea and say the words, I want. So I really coach people and teach that use those two words to anchor everything you're doing. As I said, if I was going into a meeting, I said the words, I want. If I put something on a list for me to do, for instance, like schedule the dentist, I put next to it, I want, meaning I want clean and healthy teeth. Why am I doing this? And really get back into that want. And when you say the words I want, this is how I visualize it, Olivia. It's like you say the word I, and your energy comes back into your core. And then you say want and you do it. And it just takes practice. And over time, this becomes second nature and more wants start to come forward.
Yes, thank you for building on that with that reflection. That's really helpful. And you speak so much about finding joy in everyday life. I think everything in this conversation brings us to that anchoring of when we are connected, when we are not listening to our critic, but we're really finding and empowering ourselves and our inner voice and spirit, we get to find joy more easily. And so, how can a practice of daily joy help soften this critic and also deepen the spiritual self trust?
So to me, moments of joy are when my spirit is enlivened, when I am most connected to my soul, to my intuitive voice. And I am passionate about teaching that because for a lot of years, I thought I was good if I saved my joy for after I did all of the hard things. If I took care of everyone else, if I did my job, joy was something I saved for later, for vacations. And when I realized that joy was a sign that I was connected to spirit, I completely reordered my thinking. And now I see joy as the point of my life. I see joy as an indication that I am on my path and my purpose. I see joy as something that enlivens my spirit. And the more you enliven your spirit and bring your authentic self into the world, your life gets easier and more joyful. I mean, it's just a 1-2 punch.
Ooh, yes, it is. It is. It comes back and forth. And so, what are some things that bring you joy? How do you feel joy and how does that show up? And I guess, how do you approach your day with starting with joy versus the other?
So I think, first of all, that each of us have a personal brand of joy and fun. And I think a lot of us miss that because our culture limits the idea of fun to parties, vacations, some things. So I'm going to share some things that bring me joy and fun, but I want to be clear that it's my personal brand. So I am passionate about starting every day with time doing something I truly enjoy. So for me, that means I make a delicious cup of coffee in my little AeroPress, which I love to use. And I sit in my chair and I journal and write in a free form way that I absolutely love and just lights me up. And I enjoy it. And I try to teach other people to find something they enjoy. If that's listening to birds, listen to birds. I think so many of us are denying the self by using that first hour of the day to do something hard and against our energy. And I'll just be clear, if you love running and getting out on that run makes you feel absolutely fantastic, great, start your day that way. But if you are dragging yourself out there and pushing yourself, you're acting against your energy. And I think it is imperative to start your day in that joy and then it carries through. But the things that I love, Olivia, I love writing. I mean, once I found that, I mean, I am joyous when I write. I would not write if it was not fun to me. And I absolutely enjoy that. But I also enjoy cooking. I'll cook for 2 hours for a meal that we'll eat for 15 minutes. That is joyous to me. I love getting outside for a walk. That gives me a lot of joy. So that's my personal brand of joy, but I don't want to suggest that that's the only way. Someone else could say, I get joy looking at postage stamps and I feel so good when I do it. And I would tell you, add that to your day, please, and do it often.
Yes. Oh, I love this. So, how does one cultivate a personal brand? I really like that. I think that's a really unique way to utilize this when it feels maybe this is different. I haven't cultivated my life in this way. I'm still kind of stuck in
Mhm.
my doing for what I feel like I should do, but maybe is not actually what I should do. But I heard my social media influencer tell me, and I'm hearing this from over here. How does one create a personal brand?
So, this is again where the logbook is super helpful. As you go about your day and you have a little moment where you feel good, go all in on writing down what you were doing and why that felt good. And let me be clear, you can have a great moment writing an email. Okay. You can have a great moment having a quick conversation with someone. The point is to capture what you were doing, how you felt, and to start to see that. And it's just so funny to me because, and again, I was like this my early career. We could have a day made up of 1,000 good moments. And we come home to the dinner table with our family and with our loved ones, and we tell them about the one thing that went wrong during the day, about the guy who annoyed us at work, I mean, or whatever it might be. And so we have this information, Olivia. It's there, it's within us. It's a matter of turning your mind. And once you do, I think these moments just show up. I think for so many of us, we think that joy and fun, again, are about a big celebration, a party with lots of people. No, I can have a joyous moment when I'm out on a walk and I see this great big beautiful tree and it just lights me up and I'm excited to see the tree. And some of us, I mean, I'll even say for myself, I used to kind of be ashamed at my moments of joy as if I was a simple or small person, that I took such joy in these small things. But I eventually dealt with those limiting beliefs, surrendered those limiting beliefs to spirit, and really just owned up to my personal brand of fun, which is where my soul lives.
Yes, I love that. And I'm curious, something you said sparked this thought in me of I think I often see we put on our best selves or we can find joy more easily in our day to day. Maybe in our work, when we're out of the house, we're doing what we feel is good. But we come home and then, like you said, that example of let me tell you about the crap that came down and the negative things, or really the people who love us the most, our partners, our kids, our family. Like we feel most safe in it, which is, I know, why we process. But I'm curious what you'd have to say around how do we begin to flip that? Where how do we bring more joy, more connection
Mm-hmm.
into
Yep.
our family realm as well? Because I see that disconnect happening a lot with people.
So, one of the things we do in my family, I have two teenagers, and for a lot of years, our dinner conversation starts with a question. I initiate it and I say, tell me your high for today. Everybody has to go around. And sometimes a high might be, I had a really good study hall, but it's still around getting conversation to say, what was a good thing that happened to you today? And it's just amazing to me, the little tidbits that come out from people. So to me, it's cultivating this idea of, tell me something good, tell me something great that happened. I use that question a lot with my friends. What's good in your life right now? You know, what's happening? And so I think that each of us can be ambassadors for this way of thinking and really start to shift the conversation. When I am around complainers, which I do try to avoid, I even go into an internal dialogue as they're complaining and start saying what I want. So if they're complaining to me about bickering that's going on at their workplace, inside, I'm detaching from that and I'm saying, boy, I really want peaceful workplaces. I like it when people get along or whatever it is. I just kind of tried to disconnect from the complaining and not let it pollute my energy.
I love that. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I like that you're saying we can reprogram, right? We can reprogram how we're showing up. We get to choose what energy we bring, what tone we set.
And look, I complain too. I mean, I'm not here to say I simply see complaining as a one-time event to get something out of your system and then an opportunity to say what you want. So issue your complaint, put it out there, but then turn it around and say, you know what I really want from life and what I would really love to experience, and say that want. Again, your intuitive voice is about your wants, your desires, and passions. So when you tune to that, you're tuning into your intuitive voice.
Yes. Okay. That was amazing. Such a good reminder. And it's so quick to just come back to that want, come back to yourself. So, when you do have hard days, when doubt creeps in, what helps you stay grounded in this joy, in this trust, and this connection? Do you have any go to rituals or things that remind you to come back?
So for me, it's about noticing my thinking. All right. When I get out there and things aren't going well, it's usually because I'm in autopilot mode and my mind is racing on something. And so to me, that is a sign to slow down. I use writing to expose my thinking, or even just simply asking good questions of myself. Okay, what's causing this feeling? What's happening? And really getting in touch with my thinking. And once I see my thinking and out my thinking, I can usually find my grounding again. But to me, it's autopilot. It's that mode of driving home and I don't even remember the drive. Okay. So I was up in my head and I was letting scripts kind of just play. And the more you can notice when you do that, pull yourself back in and say, what am I thinking about? What's actually going on here? You just automatically ground yourself by doing that. And that works for me.
That's lovely. I think that's a great reminder of catching yourself, right? Just noticing, okay, wait, let me come back. I am on autopilot. I can step back here and reset. One of my last questions I have for you is, do you have a message or aspect of encouragement that you would want to offer anyone listening who's just beginning to silence their critic and reconnect back to themselves?
So I think the message that I'd really like to get out is that once you break free of the critic mentality and really allow this inner wisdom to come forward, you live a life of confidence, clarity, and compassion all at the same time. And it is an awesome and powerful way to live. I believe it's how we are meant to live. And I believe it is available to every person.
Ooh, we will just leave that there. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for stating that. I have two quick intuitive heart questions that I like to ask my guests before we close out. The first one is, how has embracing intuition changed the trajectory of your life the most?
Well, I went from a lawyer and C suite executive at a Fortune 500 company to leaving and writing and starting my newsletter and my entire platform of practical spirituality. And that's all because somewhere in the middle of my career, I really, really embrace my intuitive voice. But I'll also tell you that I've done this for a lot of years. Embracing my intuition also caused me to rise to the top of my corporate career. So this isn't just limited to going off and leaving corporate. When I was in corporate, I was embracing it. And so it really, really works in anything you set your goals to be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. My second question is, what's one way you return to yourself when you've just kind of lost it? Like you've been sick, something's happened in your life. How do you find that reset button and go, wait, let me come back to where I've started?
Yeah, I've got so many tools and so many different ways, Olivia, but I'll just share one that I do. And I'll just say at the outset, thank goodness for earbuds, because what I do is I go on a walk and I put in my earbuds and I talk to myself. And I can do it without feeling self conscious because most people probably think I'm on a phone call. But I literally talk myself through whatever's going on, or I give myself a little pep talk. I really use my words to uplift and to create the life that I want to live. And something about the walking, being out in nature, and even I think like the patterning of my body moving, I just see tremendous shifts in my energy and in my rate of success of getting what I want when I do that. So that's one of my tools.
That's amazing. Yes. And for giving permission to everyone to go, find what works for you, do what works for you. I remember the first time I started walking without a dog, just by myself. And my family was like, that's so weird. I mean, this was like 10 plus years ago. And I was like, no, but it feels so good. Like, I don't want to run. And so it's giving that permission to say, stick with what you need. You never know what's going to come of it or just what you'll learn. And I think I can just find so much resonance in that walking and that connection and really talking yourself through stuff. So thank you so much for your time today, Sue. I feel like there's so much more we could get into, but I think this is a really great grounded episode to get people started with how do they work with their inner critic? How do they start to connect with themselves and find joy in their life? Because that's the goal. So before I let you go, could you let our listeners know where to find you?
My website is sueerhart.com. There you'll find my free weekly newsletter, which is an essay every week to help you connect to your authentic self, my blog, my book, and I have my own podcast. So, all things you can find there.
Amazing. I will make sure to link all of those in the show notes. And thank you so much, Sue, for your time today.
Thanks, Olivia. Great to be with you.
Thank you for joining me on Intuition Unlocked. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of insight, guidance, or intuitive inspiration. To dive deeper into our community and get access to exclusive content, head to my website at www.olivia-ashley.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You can also connect with me on Instagram at wildlyolivia for daily inspiration and updates. Remember, your intuition is your superpower. Trust it, nurture it, and let it guide you. Until next time, I'm Olivia Ashley, and I can't wait to connect with you again. Thank you for joining me